Hello, hello. Just wanted to say hi. I've not come live on YouTube ever, so I thought I'd give it a try. And my reason for doing it is somewhat personal, but also heartfelt that I can share something with you. Every Wednesday for about 2 years, I used to tune in to YouTube to see someone of whom in my life became a teacher. A teacher in a way of how he shared his very intelligent brain, but also his heart, and how he felt about this world and how he felt about life, but how he also wanted to enhance everybody's life. His name was Peter Gable, and we're coming upon the anniversary of his passing, and which is October 25th. And I just wanted to come on because every Wednesday I would tune in because he would come onto YouTube and he would share about his books. One of them in particular, which I have right here, which is called The Desire for Mutual Recognition, Social Movements, and the Dissolution of the False Self. Now that's a mouthful, isn't it? But I have to tell you, every Wednesday I'd tune in, and it took him about, I think, almost 2 years to not only read the full book online, but then he had a glossary. He called it Gable's Glossary in the back, of which he went through different words that were brought up in this spectacular book to help bring light the concepts and his thoughts about this topic, which I'm going to go over briefly. I just wanted to share it because when he started to have it, he really had an impact on me because he was so brilliant, and his philosophical viewpoint of talking about these concepts really brought into light, I'm a psychic medium, and how I connect feels like there's no physical language to it. It's hard to kind of put a physical words to when you're connecting. But somehow Peter's concepts and how he thinks about life and what he shared actually took the unseen and made it seen. That's the best way that I can put it. So I was so intrigued and so fascinated that I had the opportunity of contacting him, or we kind of connected through a private page on Facebook. His mother was Arlene Francis, and Arlene Francis was a very famous woman. I consider her the queen of television, the originator, the first woman on television, in my opinion. But she did a show called What's My Line, and I was involved in I would have to say, a Facebook page. I'm just saying hi to people that are coming on and getting a little distracted. A Facebook page of which he was still involved in because it was about What's My Line, and his mother was on What's My Line. He was very generous with his time, talking about it. What's My Line was a show from the 1950s. So anyway, I connected with him, and what I learned about Peter Gable is still is in a way, a fabulous teacher, and how he would connect people and speak to people and listen. Such a good listener. And had, in the short 2 years of our correspondence and talking, a huge impact as a teacher to me. And and unfortunately he passed from an illness, and while he was sick, he had asked me to talk about his book. Hi, Shayna. I'm talking about Peter Gable and how it relates really to, in some ways, energy and psychic mediumship. So I'll tie it all together, I promise. But this particular book and the impact that it has had. Peter felt it was a very philosophical viewpoint, and he gave me the highest compliment when he said, "Ange, I really would love it if you would go through each of my films and on YouTube, and there's so many, and tell me how I could personalize it instead of making it so philosophical." And he was sick at the time, and I started to do that and share some things with him, but then he passed away. And his work has had such an impact on my life that I just wanted to come on for just a few moments and share the book and just explain its basic concept, because only Peter could explain it his way. And if you search Peter Gable, The Desire for Mutual Recognition, you will see all of his videos and be so enlightened. But in a nutshell, okay, this book, the beginning of it is partially based on his thesis in school. And he was a spiritual lawyer. He was a lawyer, but then he was very spiritual about it. He changed lawyering in ways that I don't have time to get into, but it really is for the people and of the people, I'll put it that way. And he graduated from Harvard Law School and wrote a thesis. And the first few chapters is his thesis, which is incredibly brilliant. Then he goes into different concepts, and the basics of this, and I'll dummy it down, Desire for Mutual Recognition by Peter Gable, is somewhat based on Martin Buber's philosophical viewpoint, who was a Jewish philosopher about 100 years ago, wrote a book called The I and the Thou. And Peter, I think, expanded upon this with this basic concept that we all have a need for one another, and that this physical world that we're living in creates blocks or barriers that make us feel like we can't share our true self. So he came up with this concept of the false self and the true self. When we're operating from the false self, we walk around ruminating in our thoughts of, they'll judge me, or I'm judging them, or I don't belong there because, or reciprocity, and this idea that if the man says, I am in charge, you don't dare share your truth. You know, so we create these like little blocks in our minds and really kind of ruminate in a false reality, when really, if we par everyone's heart down, and those are my words, he was so brilliant in how he describes it, that if we share in a way our truth, there'll be a ricochet effect of more truths where we can love one another and be a part of one another. Children wouldn't starve to death because we see that there's a need and we would pull our resources to help. I mean, that's just the top layer of what he shares. And just to give you an example of how brilliant I think he was and is he once shared this story where he lived in San Francisco, and I don't know what year it was, but there was a year where there was a horrible earthquake, and his neighborhood was incredibly affected. No power, no running water for weeks. And he shares this story where a couple nights go by, and he tells it so much better than I do, but he noticed that people were starting to congregate around dinner time in the middle of the street to talk or share. And before you knew it, someone said, gee, you know, I'm really running low on bottled water. And yeah, I have bottled water. Would you like some water? Oh, I'm really low on this food. And he found that people were sharing more often, more so than they ever did. Neighbors got to know neighbors. People were giving and helping. And his statement to that was, the system was off and on came the human. Think about that. Don't we live in kind of a system? system that tells us you can't, don't help that homeless person, they might hurt you. You know, things like that. System was off and on came the human. We are human. We have a need for one another. Very philosophical book, but a beautiful book by Peter Gable. I highly recommend it. If you would like your mind to be stimulated, if you would like to go deeper and understand how we can make change towards love, loving one another, being there for one another, creating a better world. I miss you, Peter. You were quite a teacher.